I really like that analogy, Eduardo, because I've always said agility comes from within, and our soul, of course, is within us. That's where agility comes from, not from without, not from the tools, the techniques, the practices that we follow.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eduardo Martins, and this is AgilityTalks. And today I have a special guest. It's Kiron Bondale. Here's your book, Is Interior Difficulty Practice. I believe it's in Amazon for everyone to buy, Kiron.
Absolutely. It's available Amazon, Indigo Chapters, Barnes and Noble in both paperback and ebook formats. It's very reasonably priced. So definitely it's useful for anybody that is in leading initiatives, whether you've been doing it for 30 years or you're just starting. There's probably some lessons in there that will be helpful. And I like to think of it as a field guide.
And it always starts with four of these values. So the Alma Framework that represents the essence of a company. And I'm not sure if you know, Kiron, but Alma is the Portuguese and Spanish word for soul. So the idea is that actually while you apply the framework and the lessons we will learn with you that you share in your book, it can serve as a guide so you can really see the soul of your team.
I really like that analogy, Eduardo, because I've always said agility comes from within, and our soul, of course, is within us. That's where agility comes from, not from without, not from the tools, the techniques, the practices that we follow.
That's what I believe too. So that's great. We are perfectly aligned. So within our soul, I propose us to work in four key agile values. The last value in the Alma framework, Kiron, that is autonomy. And the key question for autonomy is, do you think you have the necessary autonomy to do your job? And for the Alma framework, it describes who is trusted by the company to make decisions. So it's about decision making. It's about how much autonomy you give to your team members to be able to do their job. It's about making sure you're enabling them with the right tooling for doing their job. And it starts with no one, just the boss. And trust me, there are still organizations like that. And in a startup environment, I still see a lot of that. I see a lot of CTOs that really are behaving like they were the founders and they were coding, and that's okay. There's no problem with that. But now you need to scale up and think about how to scale up, right? So you need to start giving autonomy and building this trust bond between you and your team members, right? And then
Absolutely.
upper management only, our management, team leadership, and everyone. And when you talk about autonomy, there's always that discussion about, oh, if everyone can do everything. And autonomy is not about that. Autonomy is not about chaos. It's about making sure that people knows what is the piece that they own and have all the autonomy that they need to make sure that that piece works well, right? That piece of the engine works well. And autonomy also does not work well if you do not have all of the other values that I propose here in the Alma framework balanced, because you cannot have motivated teams if they do not have the autonomy to do the job. You cannot have autonomy if you do not have psychological safety, right? And the same thing about accountability. People will not feel accountable if you do not trust them to give autonomy to, right?
Exactly, and that's where the articles that I found for my book, they all really talk about. Two of them are on the topic of micromanagement, which is the opposite of autonomy, of giving true autonomy to a team.
Exactly.
And one of them is going to exactly that point that you spoke about, that it's not chaos, it's not a free for all. So the article on micromanagement, the first one, really talks about that as project managers, we're often under a lot of pressure. We're expected to deliver certain results. And even though we might want to provide flexibility to our teams in finding their ways of working, in giving them as much rope as they need to get the job done, the senior leaders that we're working with, they might be saying, I want you to drive results. I need you to make sure things are happening. And that's where sometimes I've worked with project managers, or I've mentored project managers that say, I don't want to micromanage, but my sponsor or my customer is making me micromanage the team. To me, I say that's a cop out. That is a
Exactly.
cop out when you do that. If we have the right people, and that's certainly, I would say, that's the caveat, assuming we have the right people and they are professional, and 95%, probably more than that, of the people I've worked with are professional, we shouldn't need to micromanage them. And
Exactly. And I believe it's also the role of a real agile leader to coach the your leadership too. Sometimes you need to raise the hand and say, "Okay, you want me to do that, but this is not how it works."
exactly, exactly. And that's where, even though we may find that we are at a lower point in power than, let's say, a functional manager or a customer or a sponsor, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't feel that we can push back. We should always be able to push back and say, hey, don't worry about it. I understand your need to understand to be on top of what's going on. We're getting that information out of the team. We're going to get better results if we trust the team to get the job done. And so I never like to see team leaders, project managers put in a situation where they're saying, oh, I am behaving this way because I don't have a choice. To me, that's a sign of weak leadership. When a
Exactly.
leader says that, oh, I had to behave in this negative manner, but it wasn't my call, my hands were tied, they have abdicated their leadership responsibility by doing that.
Exactly. I agree 100%.
And then the third article, so jumping down to the third one, this talks about a situation that I've often run into where a project manager complains, I know that I'm doing a good job with the team. We're on top of what's going on, but my sponsor, my customer insists on jumping into the weeds and they're insisting on follow-ups every single day. And they want to roll up their sleeves and get in the mud with me. One of the reasons that that happens is that oftentimes people are put in a sponsorship role or they're acting as a project sponsor, but they don't actually know what the role of the sponsor is. Maybe they've never been a sponsor on a project
Exactly.
before. And that's why I think one of the most powerful things that we can do as a leader or as a project manager is at the beginning of the project, have a one on one meeting with the sponsor and establish the rules of engagement with them to say, what's your role? What's my role? What do you expect of me? What do I
Exactly.
expect of you? And if you establish those boundaries, you're less likely to find yourself in a situation where the sponsor is overstepping their boundaries.
Yeah, and remember me about a situation here. Like I was given a kickoff deck to a review for one of the companies here, and it's amazing how we underestimate that very in the beginning of project lesson that we had in our lives, like roles and responsibilities, right? Every kickoff deck needs to have a slide talking about that so we can set the rules of engagement, right? It's important for everyone to know what's the expected roles so we can discuss about that and change that if needed, right? But people often uh, misinterpret that like, okay, it's a tough rule, it's a tough role. I do not want to put people in a situation that they do not like to be. It's not about that. It's about making the rules of the game clear so everyone can contribute, right?
Exactly. And I think on top of that, the other thing that we need to understand is sponsors are going to require, or customers rather, whether it's sponsors, customers, senior leaders, they're going to need information. And if they're not getting the information in an accurate, complete manner, they're going to find information another way. They're going to
Yep.
be following up with the team members directly, or they're going to be bugging you 3 times a day to get the information. To me, that says that's a failure in communication planning. We need
Yep.
to have met with that sponsor to say, what are your information needs? How frequently do you need to be kept in the loop? What type of information do you require? And then making sure that we have information radiators or we have other means of getting them the information that they need and that we work with the team to make sure that that information is kept up to date. This goes really to that whole concept of self-managing teams. They want to be left alone to do their own thing. But if they're not keeping, let's say, their work boards up to date, if their Scrum boards or their
Exactly.
Kanban boards are out of date, then their sponsors and their customers are going to be chasing them down to get updates.
Exactly, and I believe you touched a point here. Like sometimes we still like enter in that discussion about engineering. It's kind of a black box that we have our way of working here, and we cannot like be uh, annoyed by any other things in between. So uh, I believe that this is not true. I believe this is kind of a counter agile way of working, right? Because when you actually give transparency to your process, when everyone know what you are doing, the way that you are doing, and it's clear to everyone how this works, the less people will bug to know what the status of the thing. So if you need to have a Kanban board with 15 statuses, do it. And then as the people get more mature in understanding what's happening, you can start taking out, right? So this is also like basics of process drawing. You start with what you have, with the most comprehensive way that you see things, and then you can start taking things out as you see they're not useful. So majority of the times I still see this kind of like problems that uh, are tied to like more basic concepts in process drawing and things like that. That okay, let's be clear. Like transparency is a key. It's really key in agility. And if you still want to have teams that works in black boxes, you're not willing to go to agility or even start working anything in this matter. So you should be working waterfall.
Exactly, you got it. And that's what it really ties to the second article that I highlighted, which is that we want teams that are self-managing, but we have to recognize that unless you're working in a startup, if you're in a mid-sized organization, a large organization, there are going to be rules, there are going to be standards,
Exactly.
there are going to be policies. And the standards and policies are not there to punish the team. They're there to keep the team and the organization safe.
Yep.
And so that's where I really like the term that Disciplined Agile uses, which is semi-autonomous self-managing
Yep.
teams. So we're saying they're self-managing, but we're giving them autonomy within the constraints of the organization's policies and standards. The concept of lean governance really aligns well with this. The concept of aligning with enterprise roadmaps, taking advantage of enterprise assets, reusing those assets, contributing to them. These are all ways in which a team can still be self-managing, but there are going to be certain rules and regulations they need to follow. And that's one of the ways in which agility will become sustainable. Because if we have a team that is claiming to be agile, they're delivering quickly, the product quality is good, but they're breaking the organization's rules or worse, breaking some industry regulations, they're going to give agility a bad name. Agile transformation is going to get shut down very, very quickly.
Very quickly. Yeah. I agree with you.